Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Monday, March 19th, West Fargo City Commission meeting. First item is the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. Next, we have the order of the agenda. We have a lot of changes here. We have item to the consent agenda. We have the adding January 2018 cash report and payroll check registers, the February 2018 cash report and payroll registers, gaming site authorization for WFW, for bingo, electronic bingo, raffles, pull tabs, electronic pull tabs, steel board, prize board, sports pool, 21 paddle wheels. And then we have a resolution approving contract and contractors bond for sewer, water, storm, and street improvement district number 1314. And for the regular agenda, we're removing item number 1 and adding a review cost participation and maintenance agreements for Cheyenne Street reconstruction, update on parking ordinance amendment, and an update on the diversion project. And having said all that, just some of the many changes that we have.
Make a motion to approve what you just said.
Second.
Moved and second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Yep. We do have some Boy Scouts in the audience. Could you introduce yourself and tell us what troop you're with? Anybody else? Well, welcome everybody. Glad to have you here. Next, approve the minutes of the March 5th meeting.
Make a motion to approve.
Second. Moved and second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Next item, building permits. Had a chance to meet today with Mayor Seminary of Bismarck, and he thinks their building permits are going to be down this year, and just probably the same as the metropolitan area. Also, any questions on the building permits? If not, we'll move on to the consent agenda.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Moved and second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. On to the regular agenda, item number 2, bid tab for sewer, water, storm, and street improvement district 1315.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the Commission. This is the improvement district for extending sewer, water, streets in the Westview 3rd Edition. It's the residential neighborhood just west of the Cheyenne High School. Received several bids, good bid opening. At this point, we've reviewed all the bids and would recommend awarding to Dirt Dynamics for their bid of $255,145.60.
Any questions of Dustin? If not, do I hear a motion?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Moved and second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 3, review the bid tab for street improvement number 2251. Again, Dustin.
And thank you again, Mr. Mayor and members of the Commission. District 2251 is for the 13th Avenue reconstruction project. City of Fargo opened bids on March 7th. Again, great bid market right now. They got real competitive bid prices. At this point, we're going to recommend concurring with the City of Fargo and award a contract to Master Construction for their bid of $8,800,573.25. As you can see, they sent us a bid sheet summarizing the results, and on the second to last page, they identify that the City of West Fargo's portion would be $4,041,741.15. So, and at this point, we'll recommend sending City of Fargo our concurrence to award a contract to Master Construction.
Any questions of Dustin?
Make a motion to approve the bid.
Second.
Moved in second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carried. Next item, review the cost participation and maintenance agreements for Cheyenne Street reconstruction. Chris.
Mayor, Commissioners, in front of you tonight is two participation agreements with DOT. These are standard every time we have a project with federal funds involved. It describes how the costs are going to be split up and what our maintenance responsibilities are on the road and what we're allowed to do and not to do. They're more restrictive on the one CPM agreement for the interchange, and not nearly as restrictive as for the one for Cheyenne Street. Available for any questions that you have.
Any questions of Chris? Any questions of Chris? This looks like pretty much the standard agreement, right?
It is the standard agreements.
If there's no further questions, do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved in second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Next item, update on the parking ordinance amendment.
Mayor, Commissioners, last meeting, Commissioner Simmons and I brought forward some discussion on a parking ordinance, on modifying that ordinance. We had two different paths. One was immediate fix to our current ordinance to reflect more of the intent of the ordinance, to actually have vehicles moved and operated within the 72-hour period, just not move incrementally forward or reversed. And John has worked on an amendment for that ordinance, which is included requiring people to move their vehicles a minimum of 100 feet before they repark. If you have questions on that, John can answer that. The second part of it, we are still working on the day of the week parking that we discussed in some detail last meeting, and that will be brought forward to you at a later commission meeting. We'll work out all the details. Available for any questions.
That's the part where you're talking garbage days.
Correct.
Okay.
Parking on the day of the week. No parking, correct.
Thank you, Chris. I think that this is a good first start to get this thing going. And then we can, like Chris said, he can kick back with the rest of the staff, kick back literally, and figure out the rest of the process. Because it's going to take a little longer than this is. But at least this will get this will get things moving. And I think that's important that we don't shelf this. So.
Very true.
Any questions?
If there aren't, I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Moved in second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item 6, Jason Benson here to give us an update on the diversion project.
All right, good afternoon.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. I'm Jason Benson, the Cass County Engineer. Along with me today, I've got a number of other technical representatives, so we should be able to field a lot of different questions. So from the Corps of Engineers is Terry Williams. She's the main program manager down in St. Paul. Eric Dodds from AE2S. Lyndon Pease from the Houston Moore Group, and he's our expert on hydrology. Nathan Borbroom from the City of Fargo, and Jeff Epsch, who works with me at the county, at Cass County. So, the reason that we're here today is to talk about the update on the FM diversion project, discuss the new Plan B and the permit that we just submitted on last Friday, the application for a new permit through the Minnesota DNR, and to discuss how the project has changed. So first, why the project changed. Several years ago, the DNR and Upstream JPA sued the Corps of Engineers and the Diversion Authority, and last fall, the judge that was presiding on the case issued an injunction to stop construction, and as it states in the quote there, he basically asked all the different parties of the lawsuit, all 4 parties, to go try to sit down and work this out and try to find something that would take this back out of the courts and get us to a project that we can move ahead and get constructed. So right after that, the governors of Minnesota and North Dakota sat down, discussed the project, discussed a way ahead, developed the governor's task force process, and assembled a task force of 16 members. We had 5 meetings throughout October and December. The 16 members were 8 on the Minnesota side, 8 on the North Dakota side, and were made up of a large swath of different geographic representatives, all the way from the Richland and Wilkin areas south of town, and to representatives from Grand Forks and Hendrum up north of town, as well as members from West Fargo, Moorhead, Cass County, and Clay County. Throughout that, we also we developed a technical advisory group, and which was made up of all 4 of those entities, to discuss technical options on the project. And then finally, the last 2 to 3 months, there's been a policy group that's been made up of 2 members from each of the different entities that have sat down to try to work out, as the technical group brought different ideas, they looked at them, reviewed them, and tried to work out a process to get us to a permittable project. So I'll cover the governor's task force quickly and talk about what we were able to resolve through that process. So the main purpose of the governor's task force was to try to find a solution and concept for the diversion project that more balanced the impacts and benefits. Part of Minnesota's issue was that they felt North Dakota had more benefits out of the project, and in comparison to the impacts that were happening on Minnesota side. But we also wanted to make sure that it fell within North Dakota and Minnesota law, and maintain its federal authorization so that we can continue to receive federal funding. One of the first things that we jumped into with the governor's task force was identifying what the 100-year floodplain is. Previously, as the slide shows, there's a wide range of different periods that were looked at for different analysis. In the red is the current 100-year floodplain that Fargo and Moorhead operate off of on the Red River. But that only takes data into account from the early 1900s through 1971. Every major flood since then is not accounted in that hydrology. So we know that updating the hydrology is automatically going to raise the flood elevation for the 100-year floodplain. The previous plan that we had submitted to the DNR had used the Corps of Engineers period from 1942 to 2009. And then the full period of record, the top number in gray, really includes everything from early 1900s all the way to 2009. The hydrology model that we use right now hasn't been updated for the 2010 to 2016 information. So again, this was something that both the Upstream JPA and other groups, had kind of discussed back and forth as what is really the 100-year floodplain. So through the governor's task force, we were able to come to a consensus to use the full period of record from the early 1900s to 2009, and instead of putting an actual foot elevation of 40.9 or 41.1. We just said it's the 33,000 cubic foot per second flood event. So that's what this new Plan B and all the numbers that we go off of from here are based on this full period of record. Again, I discussed a little bit about the formation of our technical advisory group, and with the key parameters, they really looked at balancing those impacts and benefits, tried to minimize acres that were getting removed from the floodplain, and minimize impacts down south of Cass and Clay County into Richland and Wilkin counties, and reduce those to where it was less than 640 acres in each county of newly impacted acres. And then throughout that, of course, having to try to manage modifications and different options financially to make sure one option wasn't going to be too exorbitant in cost. Coming out of the Governor's Task Force, these were the key items that we gained consensus with. Again, using the 100-year flood event as the 33,000 full period of record, allowing 37 feet of flow through town. This was a huge step. Previously, we had, when the project was first developed in around 2012, 2013, we had a 30-foot flood event is what we would allow through town. Everything else would be held south of town and then metered through the diversion around to the west. Then we went through an analysis and increased that to 35 feet. And part of the reason that we held that at 35 feet is because of some of the different cost increase, some of the impacts both in Fargo and Moorhead and in the rural areas outside of Fargo and Moorhead in Cass and Clay counties. Through this process, we decided to go to 37 feet, and I'll talk a little bit about that later and how that impacts it as far as how often we'll be using the project. A couple other items were the tieback levees on the North Dakota and Minnesota side, and then another big consensus item was the distributed storage. There's been a lot of talk about using distributed storage for permanent flood protection, and we agree it's a great idea and it does a lot of benefit on the different, on the main stem of the Red River as well as the tributaries and the local areas immediately downstream of storage. But for the purpose of actually getting a certifiable flood project for the metro area, multiple upstream storage pools, it's too difficult to manage to try to make it a permanent flood protection. So again, we had good response from the Governor's Task Force and some good outcomes of that really drove us getting towards Plan B, and we were able to take those recommendations and then further develop them into a permittable application that we submitted last Friday to the DNR. So now I'll cover the key components of the new Plan B. So for West Fargo, I think the key is the blue line from south of Horace all the way around West Fargo, around Harwood and up to where the diversion channel drops back into the Red River northeast of Argusville. That whole alignment for the channel has not changed with the project that we've applied a permit for.
And I saw Mayor Mahoney showed me that one version that cut straight by the lagoons and south of. Is that out of the picture now, we hope?
From our perspective, it's out of the picture as far as submitting for a permit, and I will discuss that at the end. I do have a map, so that way everybody will see what that is. So for the most part, the main changes were south of Horace in Stanley Township and Pleasant Township area, and then significant change on the Minnesota side. And then because of the 37 feet of flow through towns, we are going to have to do some additional work in both Fargo and Moorhead to upgrade some of their levee system. Here's the existing condition, 100 years. So again, this is the 33,000 cubic foot per second map with the blue showing everything that would be flooded on that level of a flood event. And then this is what's taken out with the project. So most of the areas between the diversion channel on the west side and all the way over to I-29, north of West Fargo and then in the area south of I-94, all of that area is taken out of the floodplain as far as protected areas. Where we see some change from the previous project in allowing 37 feet of flow through town is mainly on the south end by where the wild rice goes into the Red River, and then also on the north end some of the backwater effects just west or east of Harwood and northeast of Harwood. So there's some of those areas that previously were going to be protected at 35 feet, now at 37. We may have some access issues getting into some of those rural farmsteads and rural homes. Again, the 37 feet of flow through town, when we first started out looking at 30 feet, that's the green bar on the left side. There would have been 15 floods that we would have operated the diversion on for 181 days. When we went to 35 feet, it changed that to 8 flood events that we would have operated over the last about 120 years for a total of 62 days. And then by going to 37 feet, now, in that since 1900, we would have only operated for 5 different floods in 28 days. So we're really, this project is targeting those critical, large, massive destructive flood events to make sure that our community is protected and has permanent flood protection. On the Minnesota side, this was one of the largest changes that really made a big difference in balancing the acres. And because we were able to go through to 37 feet of flow through town, we were able to make this adjustment. Previously, on the kind of the upper left corner of the map where the yellow line comes in, the embankment would have just gone straight east into Minnesota, and everything south of that would have had impacts to it. Now we've shifted where it crosses the Red River about a mile, and there's a small creek called Wolverton Creek that runs into the Red River. And so this new alignment parallels Wolverton Creek to the south and then parallels Highway 75. So a big benefit of this is we don't have to have a levee around Comstock, and we have some cost savings by not having to do significant grade raises on the railroad and Highway 75. Another big one that helps split some of the or balance some of the acreages is south of Horace with this western tieback levee. And then probably the biggest change for especially the rural Cass County residents was previously the diversion channel went from where the purple, blue, and yellow lines connect. It went southeast and below County Road 16 and then across the wild rice. Now it's going up almost to County Road 14 and then heads east. And that embankment then stays just on the west side of St. Benedict's, which was critical because of the industrial infrastructure there, as well as the residential properties and the church. It would have been about a $50 million acquisition, so we wanted to try to avoid that area. So in the end, the balance, we were able to gain a lot better balance between the acres of impact and benefits. So on the left side is the pre-Governor's Task Force project that had previously been submitted. And you can see on the protected acres, 19% in Minnesota, 81% in North Dakota. But on the impacts down in the staging area, Minnesota was taking more of those impacts with 42% in Minnesota, 58% in North Dakota. Now with Plan B, it really balances those impacts equally with the benefits. So both Minnesota, in both protection and in impacts, they're getting 19% of the benefits and impacts. North Dakota gets 81% of both the benefits and impacts. And on this map, you can see the hashed areas are what previously would have been in the staging area. So on the Minnesota side, there's a lot of acres that were pulled out and shifted to the North Dakota side. So substantial changes, reduce the number of cemeteries that are impacted, reduce the number of organic farms that were impacted. All of the yellow highlighted sections of land are organic farms, and that adds a lot of complexity in the land acquisition for those as well. And in the end, we were able to, again, really balance these impacts. Now to the one main alternative that was considered that the mayor discussed earlier. So through the different discussions on the technical side, there was a lot of options that were looked at, and this is one that the upstream JPA has continued to push forward that they would like to see. They feel that it takes fewer acres out of the existing floodplain. And so the purple line is the current diversion alignment for the channel. The yellow, kind of creamy color line is the proposed alignment. So basically, as it goes around West Fargo, the diversion would cut east just below 32nd Avenue, and then so kind of halfway between 19th Avenue and 32nd, cross over County Road 17, and then head north kind of through the Lake Shore area, cross I-29, and then head north and east to the northeast side of Harwood and dump into the Red River. It did have some benefits, that it would eliminate the Maple River Aqueduct and channel abandonments on the Rush and Lower Rush, and there were some benefits down on the south end, but the impacts were very dramatic. One, the overall channel would have to be much wider and flatter, so we were going to have to acquire another 1,700 acres of permanent, permanently impacted land with the footprint of the diversion on it. Wasn't going to really impact anything on the south side as far as what we needed to acquire for land rights, because our land rights are based more off of the kind of our maximum flood event that which is closer to that 200,000 cubic feet per second. And in addition, all of the changes, the additional bridges, the added width of the diversion, added lengths of those bridges, was going to have a total cost of about $112 million. And all of that would have put the residents of Harwood and the rural residents that live along the Cheyenne River north of West Fargo up to Harwood back in the unprotected area, and so over 500 homes, over 1,500 residents back in harm's way. And that's something that we didn't want to do. We want to keep that area protected, and I know, from in discussions with the county and with Reed Township as well, there was something that they didn't support either, was this JPA option. And so what was submitted with the permit for Plan B was back to this, the purple line, that the original alignment that goes around Harwood and then continues up northeast of Argusville. So with that, that's finally what's next. We're going out and doing a lot of these public meetings between cities, townships, and rural areas. And so we'll be continuing with that. We're also very excited that with our permit application, on the previous permit, we didn't have a lot of contact with the Minnesota DNR. They've already given us a point of contact, and we'll be working with the DNR closely through the permitting process. And then on the technical side, we still have to go and do some what we call micro siting. So maybe some of the 90-degree angles on the box by Horace, maybe that'll get a little more gentle curves or something. But generally, the alignment is gonna stay where it's at. It might shift 100 yards or 200 yards or something. And then we'll have to go and update our cost estimate and financial plan. But that's, right now our focus is really on working through with the DNR towards getting this permit through their process and then seeing from there the impacts on the legal side, so we can keep this project moving forward.
How long does that process take through the DNR?
About 90 days is what we're expecting right now. It could extend beyond that if they have a lot of questions along the way and we have to go back. The Corps of Engineers is also doing updating the environmental assessment, so that'll be going on at the same time. So we expect that in the next 3 months we might start to hear something from the DNR as to that, yes, this is a permittable project. We might still have a few things to work out, so it'd probably be late summer, early fall before we really kind of get things ironed out. And another thing with the DNR is that they have accepted the ability for us to do a phased permitting process, and that's what we're doing through the North Dakota State Water Commission and State Engineer's Office. Basically, this project is so massive to try to have every set of plans delivered to the DNR and to the State Engineer's Office in North Dakota for them to approve all at one time would be too much of an effort. And so they said they'll approve the overall project in concept, and then as components are designed, like the Wild Rice River control structure or the Red River control structure, they'll approve those as those are designed and phased in.
What about the injunction? Where does that stand as far as?
So the injunction continues to stay in place. We will be beginning to work towards identifying some items that we might be able to move ahead with in construction-wise, and predominantly some other items that in town
you mentioned Fargo and Moorhead upping. I'm sure their levies and stuff. Is that part of that injunction as well, or?
Right now, everything is part of it. So we will be going to the DNR and working with them to try to get some of these components authorized. But in general, we're not expecting to start any large new work because of the injunction.
Well, it's Wilkie
next year? Is what you're
most likely, just because of the fact that this 3 to 6 month window is going to get us pretty much through this summer's construction season. And so most likely, while there may be some things late in the fall that could get bid out and maybe could get started a little bit, most of it won't be until spring of 19.
So is Wilkin and Richland County on board with this new plan, or?
Well,
yes and no, I suppose.
The Minnesota contingent out of Moorhead and Clay County will be heading down to Wilkin County tomorrow for one of their county commission meetings. And so we'll see what their reaction is to this, to all these changes. And we're working right now with correspondence between Cass County and Richland County to try to also arrange a meeting down in Wapton, so that way we can present this to them and get some reaction. So I think this is pretty dramatic changes in the project. It really shifts those impacts and matches them more evenly with the benefits. And it reduces the impacts down in Richland County to under 600 acres and in Wilkin County to under 400 acres. So I'm optimistic that they'll be more supportive of the project moving forward, but I guess we'll see.
I have some other questions, so if there's any questions about this, go ahead.
I'm pretty well versed in it.
Yes, you got that right. I just have, since I have all this technical expertise here, one of the things, maybe Ms. Williams can answer this, we've been working with the technical committee about, adding some safety features such as infrastructure and bridges to the west here. And I'm just wondering what kind of a timeline would, to get a yes or no, or on some of those issues, what kind of timeline we would be looking at. Well, we've been working with the technical committee about some things that we feel that we really need as far as our, on the west end of town here, adding a bridge and some other infrastructure underneath the diversion to get to the other side, sewer, and we're going to hook up with Mapleton. So we've been working with the technical committee, and we're just wondering, is there a timeline where we would get a yes or a no on some of those things, or and maybe you don't know that, but I'm just curious, you know, because we've been talking about it and we don't seem to get any kind of a timeline. Maybe you know, Jason, or
Mayor, I can probably best answer that.
Or our own city attorney can answer that.
The MOU is in draft form. When the injunction came in place, the third-party MOUs with some of the townships and the cities were sort of put on temporary hold. The two bridges are in the MOU. The MOU addresses the water and sewer, the pathways. All of that is in the draft P3 documents for bidding. So it's sort of
wait
until we find out what happens.
That's what I wanted to know. Is so we would have to wait until the injunction is pulled before we.
Excuse me though, John, isn't the hope is that you can engage a P3 contractor by perhaps late this year, and they're going to do the engineering still? Is that still the? So that would be the first piece of work I would assume they're going to have to tackle, because the Corps' already done some work on the northwest end, but it's the balance of the work would have to be done by the P3 contractor.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The hope is to by late fall to start re-engaging the P3 contractors. I don't know if we'll be ready to have a bid by this fall. It probably will be 2019 when we actually have a bid, because as everybody's pointed out, it's going to take the next 3 to 6 months to work through the DNR issues. But the idea would be that would be included within the P3, and the P3 contractor would be responsible for doing the engineering and the construction of the bridges, the crossings, the pedestrian trails, everything that's associated with the channel.
I just wanted to know when we might hear on some of that. That explains it, though. If everything's on hold, that probably is too. So it makes sense. Didn't mean to put you on the spot there.
All right. If there's no other questions, Mayor, that's all I've got.
Well, thank you. We appreciate that you came here, and you know, please. As events unfold, please come back again and keep us updated. We'd appreciate that.
Absolutely. Anytime, we're definitely available to come out and give you an update. So.
Okay, thank you, Jason.
One thing for clarity, Jason, I think I know the answer, but of course you pass out the maps, just the 100-year map, and shows all this area and the water being held back. I think a lot of times people look at that and say that's going to happen every year. That's the 100-year flood. But now with the new plan, isn't the anticipation that it's going to hold back that much water less frequently? I don't know if you touched on that. It was once every 10 years, and now it's going to be more like once every 20 years.
Yes, thanks, Commissioner Thorson. So that's correct. With the previous plan, where we were holding it back at 35 feet, it was about every 10 years that there would have been a flood event. Now at 37 feet of flow through town, about every 20 years. And again, in the last almost 120 years, it would have only been 5 flood events that water.
You had that up there.
And so that is really important, because especially from an agricultural standpoint, you know, vast majority of the years there isn't going to be any kind of impact on this from this project on their farmland. You know, yes, we're still going to have to get a flowage easement. Yes, there's still going to be restrictions in that area for building structures, both residential and non-residential structures. But from a farm production standpoint, it won't have any impact outside of that, you know, about every 20 years.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Any other questions? If not, again, thank you, and thanks to all of you for coming here tonight. Next we have the, any non-agenda items? If not, you're up there, Tina.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. I want to start by telling you that Melissa has been working with Public Works and Engineering and setting up a construction open house for this year to do like we did last year, to set up all the projects and let people come in and review what's going on for the city, not just Cheyenne Street and 13th Avenue, but all the projects that we have going on. That will be held April 19th from 5 to 6:30. We'll give you more information on that. There will also be a separate meeting that they will be setting up to talk with the 13th Avenue people and the 9th people, to just kind of, earlier in April, just to kind of give them the heads up and kind of talk them through. We told them that we would have that meeting, and so we'll be setting something up to meet with them too. This Wednesday, Matt and I will be going to Bismarck. There's a meeting with the League of Cities and some people from the legislative body to talk about their dashboard concept. They're trying to combine information from all different cities and put it out there in a format that makes sense, but we're really struggling because we all do things a little differently. So we're going to have a meeting and talk about that. They're also going to talk about the Main Street Initiative, the legislative proposal to use some legacy funds for different projects, and a few other items. So thought it would be good to have Matt come along and just kind of listen in on that. Don't forget, on Thursday, you have your open house or your ribbon cutting and opening of Duluth Trading Company at 9 a.m. And I'll go back a step. When I'm out Wednesday, Erin will be attending. There's a government entity coordination meeting that takes place between Fargo and West Fargo. They get the parks, they get the schools, they get the county administration people all in a room and just talk about what we're all doing and what our plans are. And in my absence, Erin's going to attend that meeting and let them know some of the things that we have going on around here and kind of bring back an update for us on what their plans are. Friday, Chris and I, and I'm not sure who else, will be meeting with the Red River Valley Fair Association to talk about some water improvements in their area that they're requesting, so we'll be meeting with them. And the last thing I have is, it's already that time of year, we're going to be starting our budget process. So we'll be sending out information to the different department heads, gathering what it is that they feel their needs are, and then Aaron's been working on a budget process. He was amending it today, and once we have that ready, probably the next meeting, I'll bring it to you for review, or I'll email it out to you for review. And it's just kind of a timeline so that we can stay on track and work through making sure everybody has full knowledge of everything that's going on and where we're at in the process. So we'll keep you informed as that moves forward. And other than that, do you have anything for me?
Busy week.
Yes.
Okay, thanks, Tina.
Yep.
I forgot, we do have one non-agenda item, and that is Matt. Is that? The Paperless Society. Thanks, Matt.
Is it draft your novel or what?
There's only Matt knows how to do.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Commission. I'd like to give you an update and also get an official vote on plaza lights. So if you don't mind, let me please open this up. Okay. So the next big element in our downtown plaza is the light towers that were discussed earlier when we came forth with the original concept. But I want to take you back and talk a little bit about how these light towers came to be, where we started, and where we are now. When we started looking at the plaza itself, it really is just a big open space, and that's intentional because we want it to be multi-purpose and flexible. And so when you try and make a real open space look unique and different, you're really limited, because if you put statues and things in there that are that starts to take up that space, which would be flexible. So one example that we kicked around was, what about a cool water feature in the center of it? Well, by the time you put a waterfall in the center of it, you can't move it around, plus it's only used for that. And so then in the planning process, they threw out, well, what about some cool multi-lighting towers that, act, you can put speakers, you can put, all sorts of things inside there. And one great example that they used was a Rapid City Square. And so we, of course, looked into the Rapid City Square towers themselves, and they are really expensive. Couple $100,000 a piece, but they're really big. They also have all sorts of stuff in them that we don't have. But the concept really seemed to stick with us, as this could be a piece that we could use to really define the downtown space. So with that concept, the architect came up with kind of the rendering on the right-hand side. And that was just our original rendering. And so at that point, we were tasked with going down two different paths. One, you could get an engineered spec for a light tower and say this is what it is and go out and bid it, which means you spend a bunch of money up front. Or you can go down a design build path where you give a concept. The hard part with design build is they're not apples to apples, and so there's some differences between the two of them. But we're pretty close with a couple of competitive bidders. So along the way, we also talked about the original light was not completely lit from the bottom all the way to the top. It was just a sort of a metal tower, and then it had a bright light on top that was color changing. And although we thought that was a really cool idea, we felt like it would probably just disappear at night. You'd see these tops, but at night, especially in the wintertime where you have more dark than light, it'd be really neat to see these towers lit up, and you can do a lot of different things. So what are the different things you can do? You can change the individual tower lights with some of the drivers. You can make them scroll through different colors, dim them down, have lights, blink and change colors in some sort of a pattern going around the park. So the options are really limited or limitless, and we thought that having fully illuminated towers would be pretty neat, as long as we could still get our speakers in that we needed, and then the ability to possibly do the tinsel lighting, which goes across the top as well. So with that, we pitched the idea to incorporate these light towers in the original draft of the plaza area, which came to you last August. So with that, we worked really hard to get some competitive or concepts slash bids. And I say concepts slash bids because they're not exactly the same. There's a price difference, but there are also some nuanced differences between the product. We searched a couple of lighting houses that were way outside what we considered within the budget. One of them was Winona Lighting, and they're a lighting manufacturer down in the Winona, Minnesota. They came in at like the $25,000 level. We had another lighting manufacturer that was also that high. And then we ended up with a Michaels Lighting, which is out of Rochester, Minnesota, and then Indigo Sign Works, which is out of Fargo. So to just go back to the individual lights, the differences between the lights are pretty small. However, there are a couple. One, on the left-hand side, that's represented by Michaels Lighting. They have designed and proposed a fully illuminated light tower with all color-changing lights. And the height between both lights are pretty much the same. Indigo has proposed a fully illuminated tower. However, the very top of the lights is just white light as opposed to color changing. Both of them have the adequate outlets and things on the top for tensile lightings, top and bottom. The Indigo proposal is about 4 inches wider, I believe, and I can't see, I think one of them 16 inches and one of them's 20 inches. Both of them would sit on very similar bases, and both of them would incorporate speakers as well. So as we were going through this process, what came to be is that there are, again, a couple of differences. And so I think if the companies were standing here, one of the things that I got out of them that were, major talking points, one, if you're Indigo Signworks, they'd want you to know they're a local company, they're here all the time, you know the players at hand. And they're about a little over $1,300 per light cheaper. The difference in their proposal versus the other one is that they have a shorter warranty. It's 1 year on workmanship and 3 years on parts on the inside, so lighting components. And then they have a white light that's quoted at the top as opposed to the RGB color changing. The Michaels lighting, the company would represent to you this, they're a custom light manufacturer. That's all they do is light fixtures. They have a full RGB lit tower that they're proposing. They have a 5-year warranty on the light components and the workmanship, and they provided a little more detailed information about the actual components that go inside the lights, the driver, and sort of the LED type stuff, which I did not include because I wouldn't be able to tell you one way or the other what's good. The difference would be they're sourced out of Minnesota, and it's a slightly smaller light. So, what is the overall impact to our budget for the light price, but then also to our original price that we started with? The overall price difference, you can see here, the Michaels lighting option would be $16,173 more, and then the Indigo concept would be $14,779 more. I'm sorry, let me back up. The total light cost is $16,173, and then the Indigo total light cost is $14,797. So as you can see there, some of the things Indigo just includes in their price, and then others, and then the Michaels lighting, you had to sort of component it out to get it as close to actual price as possible. But we feel like we're right on the mark there per fixture. The original budget and cost for the light towers, that was based on just the solid light with the lit top, was $115,000 for 10 lights. So that's $11,500 for those of you who are slow at math like myself. They were color changing on top only. They had a very solid base, and they had floods and stuff that were hanging off the sides. And as we got into it, we thought, geez, what if we clean this up a little bit? Then the final design, again, has the full color changing, all at the top with Indigo. Floods may not be needed. Both concepts have the ability to add them later if we decide we absolutely have to have them. And then they both allow for tensile lighting across the top. I do believe if you put that in, you won't need the floodlights at all. The price difference, this is above and beyond the cost that we originally quoted, was $32,975 for Indigo and $46,730 for Michaels. In the original budget, we have a contingency fee, plus we have several allowances that we feel like we could make up the difference, and it wouldn't change the overall budget. We would just go in and sort of adjust some of those allowances. Some examples of that are, one, we have a $60,000 allowance for the monument sign. Feel like you could make up some ground there. We also have an allowance for the stage. We've talked about not buying a stage. We also have an allowance for a rink system, and we can make up some ground there. So we feel pretty comfortable that this isn't going to change the overall budget. then we could make it up within the original proposed cost. So with that, what I'm looking for is, A, are you comfortable changing the style of the lights from the original solid light to lit concept? And then B, you know, which one? And again, I feel like, you know, one is definitely cheaper, but they both come with nuanced differences. It really just depends on what floats your boat, for lack of a better term.
Matt, I think that, two things. Number one, I definitely think we should change it to the color, so we can change that lighting whatever we want. I think that'd be very cool and well worth the money to do that on bikes and days or whatever colors we want to do.
Yeah, I guess if we're gonna do it, we should do it right.
Right, the first time, and that's leads me into the second one, is I like that, I mean, Michael's is an actual lighting company too. You know, I mean, and I like that 5-year warranty.
Yeah, I mean,
I get a little concerned 1 year isn't very long by the time we get them up and even running, you know.
yeah, and I did confirm, so Jill's in Costa Rica, I did call her today, and I did confirm that. She said, well, maybe we could go longer, it sort of depends. But what I have currently is 1 and 3 from them officially, and I have an official 5 from the other. So, you know, again, it's really hard when they're not a spec'd out thing, and you go back, because both of them have very talented graphic designers and engineers, I'm sure, that put this stuff together. But at some point in time, you just have to make sure, you know, whatever is the most important elements that can go.
First of all, I don't think we need to vote on the lighting change. Mike, are you okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay, so we don't need to vote on that. It would be, and Commissioner Wentz is gonna abstain from the vote. It would be a vote on which one we want, which company.
Yeah, good point.
That's what you're looking for.
2 questions, 1 vote, probably, is what makes more sense.
On the Indigo, how far up is it just white? How far up, how much on top is
Just,
it?
their top, each section,
This says an outlet up there, but
yeah, each section is
must be,
28 inches.
so that's,
Yeah, 28.
half feet or whatever,
Yeah.
and it's gonna be just pure white up there.
Yep.
Do you need a motion, or what do you actually, you want a motion, so?
We need to decide which one we wanna go
Right.
with.
Okay, well, that's what I'm kinda asking you, Mayor, yeah.
Yes, that's what we need to.
Do we have enough plugins on there if we, for instance, want to have a little market or something like there? You've got 1 GFI on the bottom. I don't want guys on ladders going up fairly tall lights and plugging in at the top.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Oh.
So there's.
I'd like to see more electrical outlets on them than less.
Got it.
In case we have like say a flea market or whatever it is down there.
Which I hope we do have, Commissioner Thorsten.
Yeah,
Or
a
some
farmer's
days.
market or
I
whatever.
thought they ran conduit already.
Yeah, each light will have a GFI on the bottom, on the base,
But
for
I
that
don't know if
specific.
1 is enough, though, that's
Oh,
what I'm
you'd
saying.
like
I'd like
more?
to see a couple, maybe that's not that big a deal, but
Okay.
be spec it in. I'd rather see more than just 1 plug-in.
Yeah, I don't see that as a major cost
I would
driver.
too, actually. I'd like to see, maybe 1 on every side, because people can use them for.
Oh, like, if you get some booths there and they're plugging
Yeah.
in whatever they're plugging in,
Okay.
we don't want them all.
But either company would have to do that, so it doesn't matter. That'd be an add-on anyway, so that's really, yeah. But you're right, Commissioner Thorsten. I think we should add that on there, that we put 1 on every side.
Yep, exactly.
Got a
Or
speaker in there,
for-
but is there any technology stuff that we should put in there, or is everything wireless nowadays? I mean,
There'll be
does it make
speakers.
sense to have USBs or whatever in there?
Oh, you're killing me.
Whatever.
I have no idea. I mean, it's a good idea. I was really focused on light. I know there's gonna be speakers in there, and we've accounted for that. I know there will be extra conduits. We've talked about that, where you can pull stuff in, but you're now taking me in a whole nother conversation.
Well, maybe that's something you have to talk to.
Are you saying that if they're playing Star Wars, the poles would do Star Wars lights?
I mean, the nice thing about these RGB drivers, the ones, the RGB drivers have the ability to do stuff, coordinate with sound, do all sorts of different things. So there will be that technology in there. As far as pulling like data over there, I think with an extra conduit, you can achieve that. Each one of these is gonna have a cavity in the bottom where you can add stuff.
That'd be good. I was thinking like, Wi-Fi ports or, if you have to put some repeaters out there or something so that you get better reception or something. I just don't want us to put them up and say, gee, we should have done that and done this. If we're gonna do it, we're spending a fair amount of money on these. Let's do it right the first time.
Exactly.
You're absolutely right. I don't have an answer for you right now. And I can ask, like I said, if you select a concept, one or the other, I'll ensure that we have some space for whatever, and I'll figure out what that whatever is. But I don't know. I'm sorry.
Sounds like something for James to work out.
Yeah, let's drag him into this.
Any other questions to Matt? Thanks for your work on this, Matt. I know you've worked hard on trying to figure this lighting situation out.
Yeah.
You did state you have money in your budget. You already have budgeted.
Yeah,
do some things, so it's not like.
We have some allowances, and as you guys move forward, I'll just, say, we're over on this, so we're gonna have to lessen these allowances to get, these different things, which
I've got plenty of money. He's sitting back there.
Yeah.
He's a cat.
Which you had already talked about, maybe eliminating some anyway. And so, as this moves forward and we get rolling, we'll just go through and adjust for that. And at the end of the day, if you can't live with without anything, then it would be a net change of one of these numbers.
I'll make do you need a motion then? If okay, I guess I'll make a motion to go with Michael's Lighting. I just like their profession. I think they're a lighting company, and I definitely like the lights all the way up, and that we can change them.
I think I concur because that's their profession. Indigo's a great company.
Right.
It's their specialty.
This is their forte.
Yeah. So
we want to do it right.
Okay, moved in second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. 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 Opposed, motion carried. And you got that, Commissioner Wynn. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Any other items? If not, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
Moved in second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carried. Thank you, everyone.